Welcome to Americana Quill, writer to writer. Please like and subscribe and tell a friend that likes to subscribe. Today I have a guest that has taught me a few things when it comes to filmmaking. He is a director and screenwriter who is responsible for creating and cultivating the Concourse Film Festival. He is as well as the founder. I like to welcome Macho Miranda. So what's going on, bro? What's going
Thanks
on?
for
How you
having
doing
me.
today?
Doing really, really well. It's a beautiful day. I'm glad to be here. I'm honored to be interviewed by such an amazing writer. And yeah, I want to
thank you.
Get ready.
Let's start off with like when you first wanted to tell a story. Like what age was that? When did you like have? Because for me, I guess I never realized I always had an imagination, and that's where it started. I guess storytelling for me. I didn't realize that until like 2 years ago. I was like, damn, I was always telling stories. So when did that start for you? Like when you were like maybe making stories up in your head, but maybe not pen to paper yet?
Yeah, well, I lucked out because my mom was like really big on like reading and writing from early on. So I was like 4, like writing stuff and which was really, really weird. And my mother knew that was like weird because she was like, yo, my son is already like writing stories and he's like 4. He can't even like speak properly and he's already trying to like write stories. Right. But from really, really early on, like my mother didn't let me out. So when I just couldn't go outside. So I spent all of my time like reading and then eventually like writing my own stories. They were terrible, I'm sure. But I want to say like before I was like 10 years old, it was already like, I can't even give like a specific age, but I just know by the time I was 10, I was already like writing stories and trying to create like scenes with my toys and stuff. So it was yeah. A lot of times that stuff is like
it's like innate. It's almost like you're born with it somehow. Yeah. So what like is that with storytelling first before you even thought about like movies and film, or film was like automatically connected in your mind with storytelling?
No.
For you?
So I'm a writer first and foremost, right? So
right.
I kind of think on those terms, and it was in the growth of trying to be a better storyteller that would eventually lead me to filmmaking. Because I would write my pieces and then have people read them, and I was like a weirdo, and I would like sit there and watch them as they're reading it, you know,
right,
like
hoping to get the reaction from what you wrote. Right.
Yeah. And people don't, that doesn't really happen that way when people are like reading. So, you know, sometimes they'll be like, oh, that's great, you know, but it wasn't the same. So I was constantly trying to push myself to what else can I do to really become a true like storyteller. Hold on 1 second. Sorry.
No worries.
Sorry.
No worries.
So I it's funny that my drive to be a storyteller is what eventually led me to be a filmmaker, because in learning on all the different ways to tell a story, I realized that filmmaking is one of the few mediums that incorporates just about every other medium into the one form, you know. Yeah. So there's writing, there's screenwriting, there's acting, there's camera work. There's so many different jobs that goes into like filmmaking, and all of those jobs, you're a storyteller. So right, like for me, filmmaking was like the epitome of it. It's just my opinion, which I'm calling, but the original and most powerful, obviously, is writing. So
no, I get that, but I think the most beautiful thing is that in order to be a great director or filmmaker, I think you have to write. You have to at least want to know how to write. Because I think a lot of people want to be filmmakers and they don't tell good stories. They might know how to shoot the right shots, but if you don't have a great story to tell, then what are you shooting for? And I think you knowing that storytelling is so important, I think is a pivotal thing. Because even you said to me one time when we were talking, when I was like doing a little bit of screenwriting, you said, don't forget that you know how to make skeletons. And when you told me that, that stuck with me. And I was like, he's right. I start the bare bone, like without our process of writing, nothing else can start from that without that. So it's like
Right,
that's
right,
kind of
right,
what the
right.
show's about. It's like the essence of all forms of writing, whether you blogging or screenwriting or writing a book. So that's why I'm happy to have you on, because you taught me a valuable lesson. It's like, don't let the industry necessarily tell you what you think you need to hear, because you already know that you make skeletons. You told me that. That
Right,
stuck
right.
with me. You probably don't even remember it like that, but like
I
you
don't
kind of
like
just told me like that.
because I have like different forms of saying that one saying. So like I'm glad that actually like stuck, man. It's in the end with especially with filmmaking, like with all the bells and whistles, in the core of it all is a screenplay, you know.
Right.
And if you're a writer, if you're a novelist, if you know someone like you that like that's what you do, always remember that like in the end, nobody I can't be a director. This actor can't be an actor. This the crew can't be a crew unless there's a script done. You know what I'm saying? And like that's why that's so important.
Absolutely. So what's your drive behind some of your short film that you came out with a few years ago?
Well,
Put in my notes somewhere. It's called the what's it called again? I'm sorry.
all
Yeah,
right,
the
so
title.
I did a bunch. So the one that really like affected people the most was called That One Day.
That One Day, yes.
Right,
That's
right, right.
exactly
And
what
it
I'm
was like
talking
it was about domestic violence and stuff like that. The most fun was School of the Dead, I guess.
about.
Uh, all of my work, one way or another, it stems from some kind of like emotional trauma that I've had like growing and so most of my films explore those kind of concepts and
Right.
observation of behavior and yeah. So like that One Day was about domestic violence, though that might never mind. Yeah, it was about domestic violence, and it was really trying to take it from like the kid's perspective. So like
Of
the
seeing their
surrounding,
parents go through it. Yeah.
yeah, and how like nonchalant they were because they were like so used to like the chaos of it all, and then on this one day, it's the one day that it goes too far, and
Right.
then like kind of everyone's reaction to it. So a lot of my other short films are kind of the same thing, where it's um, delving into some kind of an idea, and then showing the consequences of it, and then
Right.
seeing how other people kind of feel about it.
So what's your storytelling? How did you develop your style? Was it just hours upon hours of like kind of like a mental gym? Because that's kind of how I feel like I've gotten better. It's just putting the
Yeah,
hours in.
I like making people uncomfortable. I like making people think, you know. So like,
Yeah.
you know, I've become a parent, so I have to watch a lot of like kid stuff all the time.
Mhm.
But yeah, I can't really I can't really like if I were to try to make a kids movie, I wouldn't really be able to do that. I like to make people really think about the world around them and kind of ideas and perspectives that they may have in the world about certain things. And then if you, I think you know the saying how it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So a lot
Right.
of times people will feel a certain way because that's the only perspective that they have it in. But then if I kind of show you to use a 9, but to me it's a 6. So if I show you the 6 from my side, will you still think it's a 9, or do you know?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Or will you
yeah,
be stubborn in your perception no matter what? Right.
right.
So with that, I was privileged to actually read one of your scripts and go back and forth with you. I won't mention the name of it because I'm sure you're still working diligently on it. But from that, I could tell that you're very rooted in not just storytelling, but like making sure it's impactful, whether it's a comedy, which this one is.
Oh, right,
So
right.
so with that, what were some of the roadblocks with you writing that script? Was it too many hands in the kitchen trying to give you their input when you sent it out to your circle of networks? Like, was it just enough where you still was able to decipher? Like, what was your process with the script that you allowed me to read?
Well, I mean, I don't mind talking about it.
Okay.
We were talking about the Boogie,
Yeah.
which is going to be a film that's dedicated to my hometown, the Bronx. Of
And
course,
it's copywritten, so don't y'all ever think about
yeah,
it.
yeah. Like Missy says, copywritten, so don't copy me. You know?
Right.
No. It took some time to kind of get through the script, mostly because it kind of art in general is something that is a process, and I really do feel like my writing and what I create from that writing is an art. So I take my time with it. Whereas I know like a lot of people that they're excited to like say make a film, excuse me, and they'll kind of like bang out a script that's still like
missing some elements.
Yeah, it's really rough, and then they'll go and shoot a movie with that, and then after the fact they're wondering why like
It didn't
certain
connect with the people.
Right. So with the Boogie, it started off being like a show, and then it kind of brought it back. I was like, no, we got to make it a movie, and it kind of went in its ups and downs. I really do treat stuff like that like a baby, and I kind of just let it grow as opposed to like forcing it to like go through puberty and the whole nine. Just let it go through it naturally. The process for me was I feel like art is supposed to like wake people up and make them aware of what's going on in the world, whatnot. You know, what's that saying? It's supposed to disturb the normal people, and then it's supposed to make like crazy people comfortable. Yeah.
Look sane or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think the exact words for it, but
that makes sense because while reading it, I've read different versions of it, and I think you're a great writer that likes to live with the art. You don't care how long it takes you, as long as you know you got it right. And
right.
When you have the luxury of time and the pleasure of knowing yourself, I think you're able to do that. I think that's very hard for a lot of different people. Because there's certain stories that I write that I just have to be ready to put it out just because I feel like it's a timing issue with the stories. But the ones I get to live with the longest, I feel like are the most happiest I am because I know I put my all. There's nothing I can think about doing over again, regardless of what anybody thinks. So I definitely understand your reasons for living with your art for sure.
But with the Boogie, the process really was in the core was I'm really trying to figure out what's the theme, what is the message that I'm trying to put out there, and again, it's not how you say it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So then a lot of times if you just hit people with a fact or hit people with like something, they'll fight against you for it. But then especially with the Boogie, because a lot of my older work is really like hard hitting and it's like in your face kind of a thing. With the Boogie, I'm experimenting with, I guess, like comedy really. And if I can make you laugh and you're cracking up in the whole nine, but then after the fact, you're like, wait, but why is that funny? You know, why was that like funny to me? Why was that, you know? So
because the truth is funny, even though sometimes it's painful. Whether people want to admit that or not, it's the truth. Sometimes the pain is funny. Sometimes it just is. Right. I think with screenwriting, especially when you're able to film it the way you've written it out, from what I've saw it, it's the subtlety that people's gonna laugh at. It's not necessarily always the dialogue. It's the subtleties within the actions, inside of the sequences of the movements of the characters that will make somebody laugh, for sure.
A lot of times, people, screenwriting in particular, a lot of times people, like, you know the difference. Like when you're writing a book, you have to put into like what the character's thinking and this and the whole nine. Whereas with a screenplay, it's a little tricky because you can't do any of that. You have to, like, you can only write down what's happening and then what's being said. So then it's really hard to really get into like characterization and figure out what the character's feeling. But in a way, it's a little enlightening too, because if the character doesn't have to say anything and he's just doing something, then it's really just trying to figure out what can that character do to let you know how he feels, you know?
Well, I guess that's when you put on your director hat and you speak to your artist of, hey, I need this emotion out of you while you're reading these lines. So it could be portrayed on film compared to in a book, like you said, everything's written out. But sometimes I don't even like doing that in books because I want people to have their own imagination of how they might react to certain things.
Right.
So I try to keep some of my books actually more dialogue based than your average, I guess, books that want to tell you every single emotion. Because sometimes the fastest way to a point is a straight line. So me putting you through all these different things and you still not understanding it, I feel like I'm just overwriting for the public, where like to show off that I can write, and you don't have to do that if you want to just tell a great story for people to move forward with their day. So that's the one thing I do love about screenwriting, is that it's A through Z is what you're going to see on the paper, but it's up to me to make sure, if I'm the director, that I pull out the emotion so it display on film. So
it's like the difference between giving the person the answer and then leading them to it.
Right. And I've seen you do that in some of the rooms that I was in with you, where you're just a good coach, and I think that's what a director is. So you have been able to story tell and listen to the objectives, even though I could tell in your eyes, you're like, yeah, all right, cool, we're gonna try that and move forward. I just think that's super dope, because it's like you gotta have the, especially when you know you wrote the story. It's like it's hard to like let somebody give you a suggestion if they've never written before and they're just thinking you're throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. Is like that's not the best process, because the movie's not a writing room. Yeah, if you might give me a few notes, and if they make sense within what I wrote, cool. But for you to add whatever you want to think it's going to make it better, I think you handle that process really well when you allow others into your circle to read. So,
well, also too, I think as writers, as filmmakers, as artists, and the whole nine, being able to listen is like for some like really, really difficult. For me, because of the way that I was raised, I was always made to be quiet. So it was like really easy for me to like listen to what people have to say, you know.
Was that natural for you, or you had to learn how to listen?
Not, man. I have 4 sisters. I'm the eldest and only boy. But prior to that, I was raised the only child with my mom. I have tons of aunts. So like I had like women everywhere. I couldn't say anything. Like, because I was going to get in trouble. I was going to make somebody upset the whole night. So I learned just to watch and listen to, and then you just kind of cherry pick the things that work for you. And you know, because in the end, even if you object to it in that moment, that outcome isn't going to work out, because they're going to feel like you're not listening to them. And then, so in the end, I just say, yes, 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 yes. Well, this is what I'm taking. This is what I'm taking. This is what I'm taking. Thank you. You know?
Right. No, absolutely. So I just wanted to make sure I give you your props, because I think, you know, you definitely know how to set a team up for success. And I think that's not the easiest thing to do. And I'm sure you have to do that a lot, even with your Concourse Film Festival. If you want to get into some of that, it's like you have a lot of people that, you know, asks you questions so you can support them in their endeavors. So how's that been going for you as a filmmaker creating a film festival such as that?
Well, the Concourse Art Foundation, well, you were actually right. I started with the Concourse Film Festival, and then we went and did the first and only right now, the Concourse Comedy Festival. And then after doing those 2 events, I was like, man, we have to create an organization that all of these festivals will be under. So then I started the Concourse Art Foundation. And then I ran the film festival. 2 brothers that are buddies of mine, Joe Hill, he runs the Concourse Comedy Festival. And then his older brother, Gary Prey, he runs now the Poetry Festival. And now Kimberly Winter runs the film festival now for us. But in a way, they say that you can't build you can't build a kingdom with a bunch of kings. And I wanted to see if that was actually like true or not true in practice. So I essentially created the Art Foundation, and then I'll have different kings and queens running their own like art forms. So that way no one's
their own wings of the building.
Exactly. Like, they're all under one like foundation.
Umbrella, right.
Yeah, exactly. So like the film festival has his own family, his own crowd, his own like following. The comedy festival, the same thing. And they don't necessarily all mix. But eventually we're going to get to the point where we'll be able to unite all of these like artists. So that way, in a way, that really
hub of a network, right? Absolutely.
Right. Especially in the Bronx. So, yeah.
What roadblocks did you face when starting out initially in filmmaking? Was it the cost of equipment? Was it the cost of how can you execute the idea of not having a team, but you know you have a good story? Like that's some of the things I think I face to this day, and that's why I stay in writing novels, because at least I know I can get my stories out there. So what are some of the roadblocks you face as a filmmaker?
It's funny that you say that, because in the very beginning of my career, that was really the battle. So you can be a filmmaker without the the crew and the cast and everything, and you just your story just has to be smaller, so that way it's just like you, so that way it's just you dealing with everything. But when I went to the first struggles, first off, was that I didn't know any other filmmaker. There were no filmmakers in my family. I had no friends, like no neighbors, nobody. Nobody was a filmmaker. I was like an alien to everybody. Like, what the hell is wrong with you?
Like finding a brain to bounce ideas off of, like you could do now, you couldn't do back then. Got you.
So I think I really didn't set myself to kind of go in that direction until after high school. Because even when I was in high school, I was like the only actor, the only kid that wanted to be an actor, the only kid that was trying to be a filmmaker. And I knew this back when I was like 10 years old. So I had to like wait through all of these years to finally like make my own move. And yeah. So I went to like college. I went to film school in a small like art college in North Carolina. And it was really there that I got to meet like other filmmakers, and I was, immersed in this like community. And then eventually I started realizing that film school was like a terrible, terrible, terrible waste of money. Right. All the stuff, especially now with technology, everything that you will learn in film school, you can learn on the internet somewhere.
Right. You could just type in YouTube probably at this point.
Exactly. And save yourself thousands of dollars. So instead I used, I realized that the fault in my decision in going to film school, but it was super necessary. So I just used the time and the equipment that was available to me to just bang out a bunch of like short films. And that was really to work out the craft of visual storytelling. Because I tell people all the time that like, it's like novels. Novels, you have to write thoughts out. You have to write everything out the whole night. With films, it's a visual medium. So I was always with the understanding that if you watch a movie and you're watching on mute and you can still understand what's happening, then it's a good film. It's a good visual story.
Right.
The problems that I have with like some like filmmaking today is that a lot of the cues and the facts and just parts of the story are told to you by just the dialogue. So you don't really understand the character, their like motives, why they're like moving forward. Only if they don't say it, I don't understand.
Right. So you're trying to make sure that the medium visually at this point for your films are aesthetically, the energy is the same as if it's in dialogue, it could be the same visually.
So that way the dialogue and the music and the sound effects is just the sprinkle that you put on top of the cake. Even if you watch my films without any of that stuff, you would still understand what's going on.
Right. Absolutely. Let me see. What else? I like to also think that that film school might have been necessary though, kind of, if you think about it, because probably when you started doing it, the DIY do it yourself mentality wasn't always there yet. Even though you might have had the mentality you could do it yourself, you didn't have the resources. It made sense for you why you went to school, but now I can understand why you feel like, if only I took the time to maybe see if this was up on these resources, I probably could have saved something.
This was I graduated like almost a decade ago. So
so
I think it was a decade ago. Holy crap.
YouTube was very new. Like not everybody was like giving out their information like that, for sure.
So back then information wasn't as readily available. It wasn't necessary at the time. Now I would say like filmmakers now, man, all you need is a camera that works, and there's like free editing software out there. There's so many resources.
That's what I use. I'm actually going to say it because it's like it's up to you to do the work. So Blender is a pretty good one. So that's what was the name of it? Blender is what I use for this. Yeah, it's free. I don't pay anything. It works almost as Adobe Pro as far as the same capabilities of how to work the software. So it's like you learn one, you can learn a few other programs. So
yeah, they all kind of do the same thing. It's just they
right,
may not do it differently.
right.
But yeah, to be a filmmaker now, I mean, all you need is a camera and a script, you know, and
So that goes into like, what's my advice for young filmmakers for you? Like, what's some advice you can give them?
just start shooting. You know, a lot of times filmmakers in the beginning, they have their Pulp Fiction stuck in their brain, like their greatest creation, the film that they always wanted to make, and they just wait to build the resources or to whatever to make this particular film. And it's just a mistake. You should just try to make as many crappy short films as possible. So that way, once you get the kinks out and once you understand the mechanics of the craft of it, of filmmaking and the process and bringing a team in and having them help with different roles and just immersing yourself in the idea of visual storytelling, then you go make the film that you want. But you don't wait. You don't not work at all.
Right.
Just get a camera, get a couple of like people in your family that don't mind. And like, all right, we're gonna do a scene where you shoot her in the face, and then her mother walks in and it's like, oh my god, and then just do that.
Right.
It's dumb, but see if you can make that work.
But it's hours in the gym. You have to do it. It's like you can't avoid it. No,
it's like someone who wants to be a bodybuilder, but is waiting for the competition to like lift weight.
Start bulking up. It's like right.
Yeah.
So, which film has this? Matter of fact, let me go into books real quick. What's your favorite books that made you be like, all right, I know I definitely want to do storytelling because I love this book and I wish I could write something like this? Or...
I have a few, man. So I was like a weirdo as a kid, right? So because I couldn't go outside, I used to have to read. I read the encyclopedias like A through Z, front to back, all of them. So I know shit ton of like random facts in my head for some reason. Anyway, let me actually answer your question. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. Take your time. It's all good. I like that. Don't worry about it.
The books that stuck with me growing up was like Lord of the Rings, The Alchemist.
One of my favorite books that actually made me want to write.
To Kill a Mockingbird was like a
very
really
good book. Yeah,
that was a book. That one was more my style because it was a movie that really delved into like what was going on at the time. Like To Kill a Mockingbird is exactly what I would want to do with my career, except Harper Lee being the one who did it all. Right. She wrote this amazing book about the times, and then every concept of the book.
Never wrote again.
And then never wrote again. Yeah, exactly. But it was an amazing book, and then they made it into a movie, and then the movie won like Best Picture, Best Actor, Best, the whole nine, and that's exactly what I would want to do. But yeah, Alchemist, To Kill a Mockingbird, those there's a bunch of like little books that I don't see little books.
No, but like books that you probably read from like the ages of 12 to 18 that impact your life. No, I really get you.
Formed different,
different outlooks on how you approach your life today. Those are the type of books I like to write. What I loved about The Alchemist is that although it's a Brazilian author and they translated it to English, it was written so simple, but it was so impactful. It made me feel like, okay, I could write too.
Right.
And that's what made me write, like, because most people don't realize your average newspaper is written at a 4th or 5th grade level. It doesn't go past maybe 7th or 8th grade. So you trying to write past that, you're not reaching the audience you probably really intended for, especially when it comes to like good fiction storytelling. Yep. So as long as you can write from 5th grade to maybe 8th grade, you can write stories every day as long as you know the process and the science behind the art of it.
Right.
I think I cut you off. I didn't mean to cut you off. Like
no. You good.
All right. And I'm sure you have something to add to that too, because like I saw you smiling, like yeah. So.
No, I'm just agreeing with you, man. Because
okay.
It's true though. Like yeah, man. It's not. I think a lot of people say that they're not writers or they don't like to write, mostly because they haven't really like put that effort to like do it. Most of the novels that you read nowadays aren't, it's
You know what kills me the most when they say they got a story, but then they want you to write it. If you got the story, why don't you sit your ass down and write it?
yeah, just write it down. Like, what are you
Now,
doing?
and I don't mind ghostwriting, but you got to pay me. And when people act like they ain't got it, but they got a good story, it's like, I got stories for days. Like, I don't need your story. And what people don't realize, you can only tell about 7 different stories a whole bunch of different ways. Like, you can romance, you know, boy meets girl, boys lose girl, boy finds girl again. Like, it's not, it doesn't change much.
Right.
But when it's hard to understand that until you take the time to really understand your craft of stories, you know, like
that's another thing that threw me off, man. I didn't prior to all of this stuff, I didn't even realize that like all stories all fall under like one of like 7 different like
layers. Right.
Yeah. And then it makes you think of every single movie, every single story, everything that you ever like consumed, and you're like, holy crap, it's true. You know, like.
But it makes you wonder what makes one executed better than the other is the small nuances in dialogue, the choice of a moment of when it plays out. That's the fun part when you get to that level of storytelling where it's not, I just want to tell a romance. It's like, how do I tell it where you don't even know the twists and turns yet? So that's where I find joy at now.
Kind of lost.
Right.
What was it say? Like you kind of lost if your audience can like guess where the story's going before you get there.
Absolutely.
You know? Yeah. So I even with like filmmaking, like it is a process. It is like it's a long process, is what I mean to say.
Right.
But it's definitely the most. I wouldn't want to do anything else, and to this day, I refuse to do anything else. You know, if I think writing or filmmaking or stuff like that, stuff with the arts has to be something that you need to do, and that's the only reason why you should do it. Because if it's if you have a plan B and C and D and the whole 9, then do plan B and C and D, because living the life of an artist, of a writer, of a filmmaker, the whole 9 is rough, and people don't realize that. You know, it's.
Yeah. Don't quit your day job when you're starting, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, man. Keep that day job for once, you know.
Right. You know, you got to repeat the process a few times before you can even consider something like that. So which filmmaker or which film has inspired you the most to like be like, yeah, I'm on the right track. I feel it in my spirit. I can keep doing this.
Well, I always say it in like any interviews that I do. The 2 films that I think I was like 10 or something, or like in that age range. But I remember my dad. Okay, so I learned to love literature because of my mother, and then I learned to love cinema because of my father. Right, my parents broke up when I was 3, so I was always having to read and write and everything with my mom. And then my dad was like a DJ. He was one of the DJs in the Bronx that kind of perpetuated the idea at the time of hip hop. Okay. So he's like an unsung hero as far as the movement. You know, the bigger DJs were the ones who like got all the names like DJ Herc and this and those guys.
Right.
My dad helped with that. With hip hop back
which is very big. You know, there's a lot of unsung heroes that people may not know the name of.
He had a passion for like films and for movies. So when he used to pick me up on the weekends, sometimes at like Saturday night, he had to like go DJ a party. So then I would stay with my grandmother, and then he would go and rent. First off, in the afternoon, we will go watch a movie, and then after go rent a bunch of movies, and he'd be like, "All right, Macho, I gotta go DJ. I see you in the morning." So I just every weekend, you know. So I remember him renting American Beauty and Silence of the Lambs. Both films, ironically, were 2 films done by first-time directors, and then the films themselves won like the top 5. So best picture, best actor, best, everything, top 5, both of them. And it's so weird that the last 2 times that even happened were, don't quote me on any of this, but at the time, films weren't really doing that. Like first-time directors, and then their first film wins best picture, best director, best, all of that stuff. And then these were the 2 films that I rented that day. And I watched these 2 films, and I was like, it's insane. I've been writing these stories the whole nine. I watched these two movies. I just went through this roller coaster of like emotions and this and the whole nine. I was like, I would love to do that. I would love to like make movies, and then, you know, and that was it. That's all it took. So it's not necessarily, all right, so as far as those actual movies, the directors after that of me delving into like the art form of filmmaking, the whole nine, I fell in love with Stanley Kubrick and Alfred Hitchcock. And that's because Alfred Hitchcock was the master at giving you only bits and pieces of information and like building and building and building that tension just visually. He would show you nothing. He would show you very little. And then you're like, ah, you know, in your head. That's why Psycho is still remembered today. It's why like all these other films that he's done have lasted generations because of how he put it together. Stanley Kubrick, because I'm not that he was like born in the Bronx, but I knew that he was like raised in the Bronx. He went to Taft High School, which is my zone school. I grew up in Hydrogen.
That's like right down the hill from you, right? Where you
that was his zone school. He went to Taft, you know, so like I know that. I was like, yo, and this is the guy who made 2001 Space Odyssey. He made Full Metal Jacket. He made, you know, Stanley Kubrick was dope to me because he was a photographer before everything else, right? So then all he did was he translated one medium to the next. So all his shots are like structural, just composition-wise, just beautiful, beautiful. All other filmmakers look at Stanley Kubrick like he's a fucking genius because of how everything was structured. You could put a grid up onto his shots and it all matched. Like, it's just amazing.
Right. Like, you know, sunlight will match the same sunlight from the day before. Like, it don't change, basically.
Right. And he was a stickler, stuff like that. He used to do like 80 takes because he was like, nah, your eyeball moved to the left a little bit when you said that line. It doesn't work.
Right.
You know, and what he meant was you saying that line and your eye looking to the left a little bit might mean that your character's, you know, thinking something else. And he's like, no, that's not what I'm trying to, like, he was just so meticulous about every single detail. And I think if you're gonna work on an art form and if you're gonna work on something, I think that's the kind of like passion you have to have for it.
Right.
You know, unless it is, you have to be obsessed with it, or else it's not gonna work. You know.
Right. You have to be hard on yourself before you can be hard on anyone else, for sure. Yeah. So one of my favorite movies is actually A Bronx Tale. I love the storytelling and how simplistic it felt, but it was very I don't know. I just thought it was a well-crafted story overall, and then the visuals made it very heartwarming as well. So it's
funny that our friend TS, Mike Dimitro, he was one of the kids in the movie. That was like,
was he really?
Yeah. That's why he thought he went to the last film festival event, and he thought it was funny that somebody had recreated A Bronx Tale, like their version of it, and then he was like in the actual movie. He was like,
that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Dope. I think the reason why I've as an artist, I've been doing the things that I've like, I started the Concourse Art Foundation, Film Festival, and the whole nine, and then me as a filmmaker, all of that. A lot of my stuff centers around the Bronx because there's so much like history in the Bronx as far as like art and so much talent, and because like art is not really perpetuated in schools and the community and the whole nine. I mean, they try, but when I was growing up, I didn't have any of those.
No, absolutely. Like it's easy to forget that how beautiful the Bronx was laid out before, I guess, like gentrification and a lack of resources. Of like the ideal of what the Bronx was a beautiful thing before, you know, money and funding and things like that got cut short. Of like,
there's like the Bronx is a tough place. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's a tough
absolutely.
Place, but it's such like a melting pot. Like it's like I can't.
It's an energy when you step outside, right?
It's like all the elements that are in the Bronx is like it creates amazing artists, and it's just sad to me that artists from the Bronx have to go so far to get their like work recognized or like even paid attention to. And it always frustrated me that like I had to go to Cali, I had to go to North Carolina, I had to go everywhere else,
Right.
people to watch my work. And
but there's so many great actors and actresses now that's really from the Bronx that like found their way, like Kerry Washington.
right. See,
You have Stan Lee, a comic book genius.
Stan Lee, yes, thank you. See, ha.
So,
oh, another one, George A. Romero. This is the guy who invented what we understand as zombies, period. He's the guy who did Night of the Living Dead, the original. Prior to Night of the Living Dead, there were no like zombie films. It was like voodoo stuff and blah, blah, blah. Like it wasn't what we understand as zombies today. This kid from the Bronx, he's from Pelham Parkway South. George A. Romero is from Pelham Parkway South. Yeah. He grew up in the Bronx and then moved to like Philly or Pennsylvania, something like that. And then that's where he ended up going to school, and then he made Night of the Living Dead. But this is what I mean. Look, hip hop, Stanley Kubrick, George A. Romero, zombies, as we know, there's so much that comes from the Bronx that people don't realize. And it just sucks that the Bronx is the way the city is and the way the people are. Such amazing art and so many amazing artists come from this city, from our city. Mm-hmm. And yet there's no structure there. There's no there's art programs for kids, but there is no platform there for them to kind of be the medium before they move on to the next level of their careers to be like, hey guys, look at the dope artists that are out here. And then so that's what I kind of want the Art Foundation to be. And the reason why they have all the facets, you know?
So I have about one more question, and take as much time as you need to answer this, because I like to go back and forth a bit with this. Is if you got the opportunity to remake a classic or rewrite a few scenes in a movie, which movie would it be? Yeah.
That's a good one. That's a good one. All right, if I had to remake a movie, that's a really good one, dude.
I know. I had to do a lot of research to think, all right, this would be a good question.
I think as a kid, I only think this way because I have kids now. My son is 11 and I have a 3-year-old daughter. I would remake the Goonies.
Mm. Can you think of a scene that you would remake?
Not necessarily the scene. I think just like the idea of the Goonies.
Okay.
But only because the Goonies at the time, they had like a bunch of different kids, and then they were all like, it was the relationships that they had. Like Spielberg is really good at that kind of stuff. But no, that was Spielberg produced it. I don't think he directed it. Never mind. He's had like a bunch of different kids from different walks of life, and they all kind of came together, and then they were on this one mission, and they had this like idea of what that was supposed to be. And it was like, I remember as a kid watching that movie and thinking it was so much fun and wishing I was one of those kids. And if I can redo that movie and then have each kid really be a true, like from really somewhere different, you know, like each kid is a different race, each kid has a whole different background, the whole nine. Mm-hmm. I would make the Goonies and the kids that would like almost like a metaphor for America. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. The relationships that they all have with each other. You know what I'm saying? Like them arguing with each other and this and blah, blah, blah. Like I would kind of recreate the whole thing. Whereas you watch the movie and there's these group of kids that are from all these different places trying to find a treasure that doesn't exist. And I mean, that does exist, but like, yeah, that would be so much fun for me because there would be so many like underlying messages and stuff like that I can kind of mess with that would make that experience fun for me.
No, that's amazing. And I, I think this is a great interview. I think you gave a lot of insight. So I want to thank you for that. And usually at the end of every episode, we do a quote of the day and then lyrics where people can look up the lyrics of like good writing from, artists, a musical artist. So the quote of the day is from Spike Lee. All directors are storytellers. So the motivation was to tell the story I wanted to tell. That is what I love. So in order to be a great storyteller, you have to learn how to write. And Spike Lee says that himself.
Right.
And lyrics of the week comes from Lupe Fiasco. What's the song? Damn, I didn't write the song down. I think it's called Merrill Jr. Holy assumption of a man into the heavens sphere. Many mansions fit champions within 7 tiers. Evangelists reimagine every 11 years. Pause for applause evolves to what was never hit. Born to death, born to die. From the flesh, from the eyes. A veritable storm of winged forms swarms the skies. Martial norms unperformed, but the porn survives. In the dome of the scorn, they keep warm supplies. Gone to lose the youth of tooth, horn and thighs. Furthest standing, I was landing, 2 one-hand, one-man bands jamming in tandem. He who power naps the plans gathering ransoms and maps the man's laps and a hand lavered and absent. And maps man's laps the man's and the hand lavered and absent. Got a talent, traffic, and ramblings, and handling out amazing handmade maps of the labyrinth. Out of the back of the wagon, out of the back of the madam, out of the back of the magnum. I think it's just clever writing, just the way he put all that together, basically talking about, everybody's acting like things are heaven, but there's still very wicked ways, I guess. It's kind of what I was getting from some of those lyrics.
Right.
Then out of the trap of enchantment, Bella performed with a megaphone, Mega Man, Desert Zone, run marathons with sweaters on. That was so simple but hot in a place where it's so simple but not. Closed temples and old little forgots and rolled old chisels, cripples with royal missiles a lot. The old hoes that they won't give you a shot, but you can get the whole pistol. It's going to cost you a lot. These are real words from a savage mind on maximized man on an average climb, who don't deserve the whole truth and only half your time. Fit the life of a whole booth and only half a line. In the future life, I don't even have to rhyme. We'll get the entire Armageddon with only half the signs. So I just thought that was very clever writing. It's still something I'm still trying to decipher everything he's trying to say, but it was very clever writing to me. Yeah, so I just wanted to share those lyrics with the people. I'll put that verse in definitely the podcast format. YouTube tried to flag me a few times, so it won't be going up on there. But I want to thank you again, Luis, for your time, and Macho. Please tell us where everyone can reach your foundation, and some of the things you have going on next, and your merch, because the merch helps the foundation with the sweaters and.
Brinton. Oh, of course. All right. So first of all, Brinton, I want to say thank you for inviting me and for this interview. You are an amazing writer, and it is truly an honor to be like in this position and being interviewed by you. You guys can find me. Well, if you want to know festival, poetry festival, and soon food festival, dance festival, you go to cafnyc.org. That's cafnyc.org. There you can, it has everything broken down for you guys. Also on the website, you can go to the store and you can see all the merch that we have. You can see the artists and pictures. Boogie. So on Instagram, that's at Concourse Art Foundation. For the film is Concourse Film Fest, Concourse Comedy Fest, and Concourse Poetry Fest. On Instagram, you could just type in Concourse Film Festival or Comedy in Facebook, and that will pop up. The Boogie movie, you can find it on Instagram. The Boogie movie, at the Boogie movie, and my IG is the Macho Miranda, and yeah. the business stuff with the Art Foundation. We post constantly on the IG and Facebook, on just social media in general. My personal page, I just kind of put like my kids and
Yeah, just send me the links
great.
of the stuff you want to promote, and I'll put it down on the YouTube page and everything. No problem.
Okay, cool.
All right,
And yeah,
guys, thank you for listening.
I just have a lot of stuff. Huh?
No worries.
No, I was saying I just have a lot of stuff, so just after.
Yeah, so just look out for the links that will be posted. No worries. This is Writer to Writer, Americana Quill, Writer to Writer. Thank you guys for listening.